Hello, welcome to Reanimated. This is episode 304 of our fine podcast. And my name is Stuart, and I'm one of the two, hosts. God damn it. My name is Stuart, and I'm one of your hosts. Joining me are the dulcet tones of H.A. Conrad coming at us from the East Coast. Hello, H.A.
The dulcet snorting of H.A. Conrad.
Dulcet and snorting are two complementary sounds.
It's true. But welcome. And we are talking a little bit more about Walking Dead today, but we have a few news items. It's getting to be Halloween season, so there's a little bit out. There's actually quite a few things out there.
Yep.
We've mentioned this a couple of times before, but I'm sure we will probably talk about it maybe at some point, but Day of the Dead series just debuted on Sci-Fi, or Sci-Fi as I like to call it, yesterday. And
stick to your guns, HA. Stick with Sci-Fi. It's your brand.
Sci-Fi is my brand. And I read a couple of the reviews, and doesn't shock me that it's sort of like middling reviews, but
yeah,
we'll probably check it out at some point. I will just make note that apparently the effects are pretty good. So
yeah, the stills I've seen have looked good. Yeah. I think what people are going to be looking for is, does this deserve to have a Romero style title?
Yeah, and I mean, at least with a couple of the trailers I saw, they're trying to kind of be all things to all people, i.e. like kind of that, I don't know, I don't want to call it the CW sensibility, but that's kind of what it is with this, like, maybe it's like more of like a Riverdale sensibility, like, and that's a little bit a hard line to walk in a zombie apocalypse. So
speaking of Riverdale, not to completely go off on a tangent, but did you see the news that Sabrina is going to go to Riverdale now?
Ooh, well, that's kind of cool. I kind of like Sabrina.
Yeah.
Wait, like the actor or the character?
I think the show is like merging or something now that she's out of, I don't know. I just saw one headline that suggested
maybe I didn't catch up or whatever, but
I'm not.
Oh, well, I mean, like, spoiler alert, everybody. I mean, I thought she died in the show, but maybe.
I mean, doesn't she have control over those kinds of things? I don't know.
I don't know. Well, anyway, I'll have to check that out.
However, this show, we will give it the old Reanimated try, and then we'll report back. But I'm not loving the reviews that I'm seeing so far. But you know what? Reviews.
Yeah, I know. You have to take it with a grain of salt. But
other things that must be taken with a grain of salt include the next in the massive spin-off machine that is AMC's The Walking Dead,
or cash grab, as you might perceive it.
I mean, this was a known. We knew this show was coming. They talked about this a year plus ago, and this is the anthology show has been announced, which is going to be named, and I've already forgotten.
It's like Tales of the Dead.
Tales of the Walking Dead. Yeah, and honestly, there's a lot of fodder here. Scott Gimple was always great at telling little stories about other survivors. Way better at it than Althea with her freaking video memoirs.
Let us not talk about Althea.
Let us not mention Althea in these hallowed halls. But so it's going to be Channing Powell, I believe, is going to be the one as the showrunner, with Gimple in his position as Overlord, making sure that he doesn't go off the rails. But that really worked out okay in The World Beyond. So we'll see.
Yeah.
No, not yeah.
I know.
No. But it'll be coming out in, I believe, 2022, maybe in the spring. I forget when exactly. We will check it out, as we will check out almost anything, because we are gluttons for punishment.
Yes, we are.
I also found a trailer and an article in PC Gamer for a game called Undying, which looks interesting to me. They are taking the premise of Cargo, a parent who has been bitten, and that's the game. You've already been bitten. There's no like avoiding death. You will be dying, but you have to take care of your child in the meantime and prepare them for. It's not like Cargo and they're an infant. They are a small child, but hopefully you can pass on to them enough survival skills so that they will be able to live on after you are gone. I mean, it's bleak, but it's a pretty interesting premise for a game, I thought.
It is, and it looked good. So I'm curious to see this. I'll hear what you say about it once it actually comes out.
Yeah, it'll be out on early access pretty soon, and we'll have links to the article. I believe you can already find it on Steam.
Yep.
So there
Um,
it is.
And last but not least, but segues nicely into our Walking Dead reviews, two of the Walker actors who were heavily featured earlier on in The Walking Dead as Michonne's sort of armless bodyguard or whatever you want to call them, the walkers that she would sort of have behind her, and she was introed. They're very like very much featured in the when we first are introduced to her. They are both in this like haunted trail experience in St. Clair, Michigan.
Yeah.
So there's like a little feature on them, which I think is kind of awesome. And I think it's fun that they did this.
Yeah,
So
there's a ton of these things out there around the country for Halloween, as you might imagine. I think people are really getting into Halloween and spooky experiences this year after, the last couple of years of pandemic feelings. So this one stuck out to me, the fact that those two guys
yeah, I
are going to
know.
be at the same event.
I don't
And
know. I think it's kind of fun.
yeah, totally. I don't know if they'll be part of the spooky trail or if they'll just be at a table signing autographs,
Oh,
which would
that's
be
true.
probably
I,
more.
I was imagining them being on the trail, but you're probably right.
But yeah, so if you happen to be in St. Clair, Michigan, in the last week of October, go check them out. It's, I forget their names, but it's the two. Yeah, those two guys that Michonne did not actually care for very much. Their names are Moses Mosley and Theshay West, and they will be there to thrill their fans. So that's our news, and I thought that was, like I said, there's a ton of those sort of like spooky houses and zombie
Oh yeah.
walks and zombie attacking type stuff. But that was one of the ones that I thought sounded kind of cool.
Yep.
And what else was kind of cool were the last two episodes of the first part of season 11, Broken Promises Broken and For Blood. These are both directed by Sharat Raju, and then they are written by Julia Ruckman and Eric Mountain in turn. And this is where the season sort of ends for now. I don't know when it's coming back. I assume next year, don't you think?
Yeah, I'm not sure the timing, but um, you know, I liked a few things about these episodes, but there are things that I really disliked. One, exactly like what we were talking about the last time in that I want to know a lot more about how the Commonwealth works just from a logistics point of view, and I don't feel like I have a sense of that. And there's a couple of things in the storyline that I think don't completely make sense, and some do, but like
Commonwealth is only worse after this
yeah,
plot.
it's worse. And it's just again, it's just that sort of my ability to believe that there is a community that actually would be functioning like this, I find a little bit of a stretch for me.
Yeah.
Um, but, basically, we see, and I think it was pretty clear that this was something that was foreshadowed in the last episode, just with our group, Eugene, Ezekiel, Princess, and Stephanie. Um, and they they run amok of some of the policies and are basically sentenced because they were caught breaking into the communications tower. And they were sentenced to basically their kind of crap labor, which is clearing walkers.
Which is kind of harder than I would have thought they would make their punishment labor. Like that is actually, you could die doing
Yeah,
that. It's not just like hard labor, like breaking rocks into smaller rocks, or like going to
right.
work on a assembly line or something. They're putting themselves in harm's way.
Well, they are, but there's also this weird thing where if and it is harsh, but I guess you'd have to have harsh punishments in order that people are too scared to break the rules that you have. But the thing that I found a little weird about it is that, you know, basically Eugene, Ezekiel, Stephanie, all these the newbies basically are so new that it feels to me as if they would still sort of be on trial, that they're not actually in the Commonwealth. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's like once you're accepted and have passed through those screens, you're in it.
Well,
But
they talked about them as asylum seekers, that they were
they
not actual
do.
citizens in a couple
Yeah, but
episodes.
like I don't know, it just felt like they would more likely. I guess they could get labor out of them, but to me, it seemed more likely they would just boot them out there, but
Yeah.
or maybe kill them,
Well, I
just so
think
that.
I think that was to it was either gonna I forget what the potential sentences would have been for their crimes, but this is like Hornsby's solution. This is his
Yeah, yeah,
compromise
yeah.
that he's getting them, is that you work on these Walker buildings, and then we'll get you all sorted out. Of course, Hornsby is completely manipulating all of them.
Of
I
course.
that whole picnic scenario was completely a manipulation too. This was all a setup, right? This was the fact that he split them up and sent Stephanie and
Yeah,
Eugene
yeah,
out there like they weren't going to do exactly what he wanted them to do. And that puts him in a position to get information out of Eugene by the end of this episode. It's all, and the thing is, what I don't like about it is Eugene's a smart guy.
yeah.
And yet you put him in this room and he starts quivering like a bowl of jelly. And you're just like, dude, come on, man. You should see this. You are the
Yeah,
smart guy.
it felt weird. Also, if this was his deliberate thing, his idea that they would be heroes and rescued, I mean, the whole idea being the president's son or a governor's son, Sebastian, and even his sort of like his reactions felt sort of dumb,
Yeah, super dumb.
like super stupid, and I just don't buy that that is actually how anybody, no matter how like sheltered you might be in this world, you still got a healthy terror of walkers no matter who you are.
Yeah, and he
And
doesn't seem scared of them at all. And
right.
yeah, and his other side of the reaction of like, oh, look what you did to my date, BS.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it just felt
it's
strange to
it's
me and
annoying.
forced.
And why is
But
Mercer involved in this? If he's head of security for the entire community, what is, I assume that's his job title. Maybe there's another guy above
yeah.
him, but if this feels really low for him to be involved in.
Yeah, it does. And again, he seems to be very, I don't know. I don't buy that he's in the pocket of Hornsby, but maybe I'm wrong. But he'd kind of have to be in this particular scenario to have fallen down on the job, so to speak. So I don't know. So there are things that don't add up, and maybe we'll find out more. But those were a few of the things that I was not psyched about. One thing I do think, and I think that they could have done this maybe without such a heavy-handed treatment of it. I mean, I think you could have somebody who, like Sebastian, who is sheltered from all of this stuff, um, and doesn't know how to fight per se, and maybe is like very entitled. And I'm, they're clearly trying to draw parallels between, they're trying to draw, I think, modern day parallels between, now and then, right now. But I think that there would have been ways to do this without making it so ridiculous. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So and I did enjoy the clearing of the walkers from the building, and like Stephanie and them kind of getting on top of each other to try to like clear these things, and that it was very hard work and they're just kind of like doing what they got to do. So that was kind of good.
I was glad that they also at least established that they've been there for a couple of days doing this now
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
Because one of the things that I have had a hard time with this run of episodes is the chronology. What with Alexandria going through like trials and tribulations that just feel like time must be passing their way faster than everywhere else. Because if you're like just watching the Negan and Maggie storyline and the Leah and Daryl storyline, it's been like 3 days.
right.
But but Alexandria has somehow run out of all their food, gone hunting, run out of all of that food.
Yep.
Like just everything that could go wrong is going wrong at Alexandria. But what are they on a fast forward? Because
I don't know.
but in Meridian, oh, not Meridian, but in the Commonwealth at least, they were like, yeah, we've been clearing walkers for a few days. That gives us at least a little bit of a sense that it's been at least like a week probably that they've
Yeah.
been out there doing this stuff, or going through the initial intake and then getting in trouble on their first day and now
Yeah.
clearing walkers for a few days. So I was glad for that. We've also got Ezekiel having trouble with his freaking tumor, and then just going to the hospital, getting what feels like a very band-aid type solution, some
Yeah.
antibiotics, a little bit of who knows what, but not like a surgery, which is probably what he really needs. But
And
coming out and being
chemo or
like,
something.
he comes out talking like Shakespeare again, and you're just like, this feels a little overcompensating.
Yeah. And like he's not cured yet. You can't, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, and you got that going on. But then we also have is it this episode or this, I think it's this episode where you have Miko basically sort of the whole weird thing with her brother continues,
Oh
and then
God.
and
Yeah.
then it turns out that they don't, maybe what's kind of ridiculous about all of this is that she does tell them in the beginning that he's a thoracic surgeon. So if this is, I don't know how he would have hidden that info from people. I don't, it feels like there's, and his brother and her brother is arrested or something.
They kind of killed the mystery for that for me, because I was, in the first episode where we meet him and he's like, "Don't tell anybody I'm a doctor." I was like, ooh, what's the secret
Right.
thing about doctors in the Commonwealth? I mean, you don't want anybody to know you're a doctor in The Walking Dead because doctors die first.
Yeah,
But
clearly.
in the Commonwealth, it's like this could be helpful. And it's just that, like, he didn't like the stress. I felt like that took all the mystery out
Yeah,
of that
it,
for me.
it just made it a little ridiculous. Like I just don't, and I again, like I feel like you would probably try to make yourself more valuable, right? So unless there's a mystery that they're
Well, he
not
seems
telling
to
us,
be enjoying this, like, blue collar.
baking.
I bake and I live in a dorm and this is the life for me kind of thing. I mean, it's even money now that he's gonna take the tumor out of Ezekiel's neck,
Yeah,
right? Like
probably.
that's,
Gotta be.
you show a surgeon in episode 5 and
Right,
he's
right.
gonna do surgery on our guy who needs surgery in episode 12. So that's probably how that's gonna go. Great. It means Ezekiel will live, and I love Ezekiel, so I hope that he does get that.
Yeah.
So, but then, like, the arrest in front of her, they don't even say anything to him, and it turns out just to be another power play by Hornsby. He doesn't even really explain what
Yep.
he is doing to Tommy. I don't know that if I was Miko that I would have accepted that argument.
Right.
The fact that they've put her in a pantsuit makes me feel like they've really defanged her too. I mean,
Yeah,
this
I
is a
don't like it.
dangerous lady. She could be cleaning up,
Yep.
but she's not really cleaning up as a lawyer or as an assassin. So
Right.
I'm a little bit just like, all right, let's fast forward through these machinations of the
Yeah.
Commonwealth, please. So that
Exactly.
was not my favorite storyline for this episode.
Nope. And then back at the ranch we also have the Reapers, whole search for Maggie's group. You've got a little bit more of context between Daryl and Leah and sort of the things, the little, like, I think, schisms within the groups and how they're feeling about Pope. There's a point where they find this family in the woods, and generally they're I think it sounds like their sort of rule of thumb is that you take out anybody that you meet. And when Leah calls back to Pope, that's what he tells her to do. They let the dad and the kid run away and they kill off the mom because she's too injured, but
Leah
like,
can't even do that.
yeah, and Daryl does that. Although I don't know. So there's definitely some cracks in the armor of their devotion. And that is a piece that I also have some skepticism about, because you can't both sort of raise up this group as one that is completely tight, supportive of each other, like sort of blind faith. Um, and then show these cracks sort of so easily. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's, to me, it's a little bit muddy and confusing on this point. Like, and they kind of do it even within, like, have these like strange contradictions within minutes of each other. And like, I'll talk about a point that happens in the next episode on this. And there's, I don't know, like, Daryl isn't totally trusting Leah, but he seems to be trusting her a little bit more. And so that's kind of,
I don't think he trusts her at all. I think he's trying his hardest in his quiet Daryl way to convince her to not
maybe.
follow Pope anymore. Like,
Yeah.
he's basically, every time he has a conversation with her, it's about why is she loyal to Pope.
Yeah.
And she's defending her loyalty to Pope and the Reapers. And I'm like, if I was Leah, I would also see where this was going.
Yeah. No, I guess that's what bothers me, is that it's like clear. And I don't know, again, much like our group at Commonwealth, I don't feel like he's newly and I can't think that it's an accident, but he's newly invited into this group and he's still on trial, sort of, in my opinion, a trial run. And so it just feels like they give him a little too much freedom and a little too much leeway. But
I mean, he is careful, I think, to only really talk that way in front of Leah when they're by themselves, and they do have a little bit of a different,
yeah.
relationship than anybody else does with Daryl. But yeah, I agree that and we can get to that point that you're talking about later too.
Yep.
Um,
But in the better part of this episode, and this was probably my favorite part, is the interactions between Negan and Maggie.
of course, these are your favorite parts because you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
I am, although
There,
less
if
likely
you don't,
after.
no, yeah, you don't feel it really. These two episodes, there's not a lot of
No,
not a lot of chemistry going on
although
here.
I will say that I think if because of these episodes, if it does happen, it makes it even more like, whoa, right?
Whoa.
And Maggie is going to really hate herself.
I mean, they do come to an agreement, but then he also does say those things to her, and I think that's in the next episode when he's like, yeah, I would have killed all y'all motherfuckers, and she's like, what is wrong with you?
No, I think it's this episode, and it's
Is
like,
it in this one?
yeah, and
Yeah, he does.
it's really like striking because this is actually why, and Jeffrey Dean Morgan does an incredible job with this because it's like he does not make any bones about what he is or who he is, and especially with Maggie, there is much more unvarnished like Negan with her and not trying to play the game with her because she know like there is a lot of honesty between them. So this particular exchange didn't shock me all that much as it shocked her. Um, but there was definitely it was really well done between the two of them, and her reaction is sort of like, why on earth would you tell that to me? It's
Like
like,
I tell you all the time how much I want to kill you. Why would you say that to me? Yeah, and he's just like,
right,
look, we got to be honest. I mean, I get it. It is probably not like great for his self preservation, but I mean, if I was him, I probably would have had the same reaction. Like, man, why did I ever let any of those guys go? That only let them
right,
build their revolution because I let all the
right,
leaders go. I killed two of like their enforcers who everybody loved, the two popular ones,
yep,
but left all the leaders alive.
right.
So yeah,
And that, but you know, it does, they have a truce or at least an agreement that they can bury the hatchet, so to speak, here if he helps her against the Reapers, and his help is in the form of exactly what we were talking about, funnily enough, in the last few episodes,
right.
which is that he is using the Whisperer skill set to do against the Reapers, which is actually like it's a pretty cool skill set. Gotta admit, in this world, it is definitely worth knowing how to herd the walkers.
It's super useful, and they have a nice, it's not really a montage, but throughout this episode it
Yeah,
shows Maggie kind of being really bad at it and then getting better, and Negan like being like, hey, good job, and try it differently, do it differently next time or whatever. And I kind of wish there had been more of a learning montage of how to be a whisperer that
yeah,
he could
yeah.
have showed them. Like, here's how you skin it, here's how you dry the skin, here's how you make your
Yep.
first mask, and then showing Gabriel and Elijah. They don't, yeah, they do actually all end up in whisperer skins, so
Yep.
they everybody gets read in by the next episode. And Elijah's asking Maggie like, do you think he's changed, and she's just like, no.
Yeah.
He's there's something in this for him, so that's why he's helping.
Yep.
But yeah, I was really happy to see that, and I think it's kind of weird. Don't you feel weird about it at the same time? It's like, do we want them to be whisperers? It's a little gross, but also, like we were saying, they do have a useful skill set.
Well, it's a little gross, but if you're using it for these purposes and if you're outnumbered and if you're doing like, there's not many advantages that they have here. And this is definitely one. And most people have not seen what the Whisperers do. So, and as we see in the next episode, that's definitely true.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
man, that the scene where Wells buys it, it's a little dumb, but it's also very impactful,
yep.
because it's basically like, this is how Jesus went out, except we don't like Wells, or we don't know him very well. Also, at the very end of the first episode that we're talking about, Elijah sees the zombie of his sister, which is
Yeah.
he
Sort of
starts
sad.
crying, and Maggie holds his hand, and so we've got more of this like emotional Elijah.
Well,
I'm
and
hoping we get more development for this character,
I
for
hope we
him.
get more development, but I also thought that the good thing that it showed, or the highlight that it showed, is that as they are sort of hurting this particular group of walkers, these are all people they knew,
Yeah.
because Meridian was breached by Pope's group and they killed everybody. So it's not just that these are these are walkers of people that they know, and that makes it even more fraught. And so I thought that that was a good way to highlight that particular piece of information, and I thought it was a really nice bit of narrative there. with no dialogue,
And
because
it shows that
you
the
don't.
Reapers were basically killing kids too.
Yeah, yeah. So
There's
anyway,
yeah,
and this jumps into the next episode, and we see a little bit more of Alexandria here and how dire it's become. And again, I just I have to say, there's so much about this that doesn't, I get that there's a storm and that the walls are breached and all this other stuff, but again, this is a group of people who have survived through so much, and I just feel like they always seem, at least in this particular season, have seemed a little too helpless. And I know that they're trying to show how worn down and tired everybody is and hungry and all of that stuff. But when it comes to sort of Walker sort of sense, it just feels like they've forgotten everything conveniently. Like they have lights going on in the house, and somehow the walkers are all drawn to that house. I don't know. What do you think about this?
yeah. The fact that the walkers all end up on their porch does feel a little bit odd. Also, the fact that Gracie's deciding to practice swordsmanship in front of an open window, odd,
Right,
and the fact that their front door has suddenly rotted out,
right,
and it's under eaves. Like, how does this even happen?
right.
So
It
yeah, there's a
doesn't make
bunch of stuff.
sense to
They're
me.
just the showrunners want Alexandria to feel like it's on its last legs, and they managed to do that. You don't feel like this is a thriving community, or even it's like one house is really all we even get to see during this
Right.
episode. So we don't know how many other homes there are. We know that Jerry, I think, has his own place. Jerry's not in this episode, but Nabila is, which is weird. Why aren't they in the same house?
Yeah.
So it's kind of odd. But yeah. Oh, also from the last episode, one more thing that Leah does tell Daryl during one of their conversations when they're out scouting, before they find that family, is that she admits that they needed a shelter, so they took Meridian. Like she has, they're just, there's no sympathetic angle to the Reaper's
No.
story. It's just like, oh, we needed something, so we took it and we killed everybody who was there. And in the next episode, it's like we're gonna kill everybody or we're gonna chase them down and kill the rest of them because we don't want them to come back. It's just, it's so bloodthirsty and cruel, that you're just like, oh, why why does Daryl even really keep trying
Yeah.
with her after a while is kind of the question. And I don't know. I mean, maybe by the end of this next episode for Blood, maybe there is no more relationship there to be salvaged. But I feel like
Well,
they're probably
I
going to try again, aren't they?
I don't know, but I think at least I was reading it as that he always does his reconnaissance well. I think he was seeing if there was maybe a chance of redemption, and the more he hears from her, the less he is enjoying, although he makes one more try. So I don't know. That's the but but I also feel like he's trying to get more info out of her about just how things work and whether they really buy into what Pope says. And it's clear that they don't, but it's like, but they're kind of with him because he's the most powerful, or it gave them something to hold on to, is kind of the answer that she gives him, which is
Yeah,
not a very good one.
I think like it's also the trope of the commander is kind of losing it. Certainly in this episode, he like compares himself to God. That's what kind of the last straw for Leah.
Yeah.
It gives her the freedom to do what she has to do at the end of the episode, or not the
Yeah.
end, but to finally get rid of him. But I think that, the idea is that he had been a more compassionate leader to begin with, who had built up this culture of family bonds between the mercenaries. So that would have made more sense then. But over time, he has become unhinged. But you were making good points earlier, and I'm sorry to derail us from Alexandria. There is, yeah, like, and the fact that they split up the Alexandrians into these three teams, and then we don't get to see what any of the outside teams get up to out there, right? It's all the action stays in the house. But this is good because it lets us see kind of Judith and Gracie. Judith continues to just be like this incredible member of the community. Like she wants to go out and help the grown-ups, but she also sees that she can be helpful indoors, and really
Right.
helps Gracie because Gracie's losing it. And when Gracie is crying and telling Aaron she doesn't want him to go, honestly, I don't think she's crying, but she's just saying, Daryl or Dad, please don't go. And Aaron's like, I have to.
Yeah.
It made me very emotional.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's, it's hard to be a kid in this. I didn't mind a couple of these things, but again, it just didn't sort of wash with what we know about this community. And honestly, even what we see with like Rosita, I mean, she's pretty badass, and there's a pretty cool scene where she takes out all of these walkers.
Oh, that's a
But
superhero scene.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's totally superhero, and it's you can see the obvious like parallels that when that they're making between her and Michonne, basically. But also, okay, again, this is one of my issues, which is like this group has been around long enough to know what to do if walkers are like, say, swarming a house like this. Like Rosita, I don't believe would have just sit there and defending it like that. She would have led them away, which is everybody knows how to do that. And it just seems so strange to me that this is what they would get into the position where they are, kind of hold up in a really dangerous way. But again, I digress. But back to the Meridian stuff, which is the main action of this whole episode. You've got the whole, they've mastered the whisper skills, they're bringing the horde in, and coolly, like Pope and them all have the same reaction that basically the Alexandrians and Hilltoppers did over the Whisperers, because they've never seen a herd acting like this. And
You mean coolly, like that was a cool story beat for them to be
oh
like,
yeah,
oh, have you ever seen walkers move like that before?
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
very
thought
good.
it was cool to hear those same bits of dialogue spoken
Yeah,
by now the bad guys. Yeah,
right.
that was cool. And Daryl, honestly, like he's more savvy or like sly than I would have
Yeah,
given him credit for. He
yeah,
lies well, and he
he
tells the
does.
right lies a lot of the
Yep.
time, where I would be like, uh no, I
Yeah,
don't know. I don't know what that is, or I'd say something wrong, but he's just like, yeah, I've seen that before. Down south, I don't know what it meant. And then like they'll just walk away by themselves, or I can go and lead them away. Like he is coming up with solutions that will let him like talk to Maggie and whoever's out there.
yep.
He sees the writing on the wall, and he continues to help them as this episode goes along.
And I will say he's got like Norman Reedus says, like, look, Daryl doesn't often have like, he does not have a ton of dialogue, but his facial expressions are awesome.
Well, there's a
So there
whole
was
scene about his face in this
right. So
episode.
there, the moment when he realizes what is happening out there, and he like it's a pretty cool one, because he's like, damn, they're doing the whisper thing, like it's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah.
um so, and also by offering to go out and them sending somebody else, he sort of takes away some suspicion towards him, because they obviously send one of their own out, Wells, and that does not go very well.
Well, okay, let's talk quickly about the scene. It's not a long scene, but so he's leading them away. He's way too close to
Yeah,
the front of the herd. Even I mean, he could be 40, 50 feet in front of that herd. They
yeah,
would still follow him based on
yep,
his knowledge of zombies. And then when the other one shows up, they're coming from like the left of
yep,
in the direction of travel of the herd. And he doesn't just lead them off to the right. He
nope,
doesn't just walk diagonally off to the right. He decides to stand in between the two herds and start stabbing them, and gets on the
yeah,
radio. And he's like, we've got a problem. Like he basically chooses to die in this. I don't even if there weren't Whisper or Maggie and Negan there to stab him, which was awesome.
yeah, that was
He
pretty
he
cool.
he would have been overwhelmed by the hundreds of zombies that were just collapsing on
Well,
him.
I thought what they were trying to play is that all of them are pretty cocky about their skill set here, and they no longer view walkers as a threat in the way that they probably should. But I didn't think it was done artfully. I think there was a better way to do it, because it did seem pretty obvious that he shouldn't be where he was, and he was too close and all that fun stuff.
This
So
episode does do a good job of set, like what you're saying. They are very skilled. Basically, Maggie in the last parts of this episode can't even land a hit on this one guy. Like
yep.
she's just swinging at this dude, and he's just dodging.
Mhm.
We don't see that many Reapers actually go down. Wells is one of just a couple. I think two more get taken out in this episode. These guys are hard to kill, and our guys can only really get the better of
Jump
them
on them.
when there's a complete surprise, like in this case where they had no idea what a whisperer was. And now I think they probably will after this. But yeah, Wells, that first dodge stab is straight out of the Jesus attack
Oh
playbook.
yeah.
It was that was a little bit hard,
Yep.
because I was like, oh man, that's how Jesus died. And Wells goes out screaming, and Maggie and Negan kind of walk away in their whisper stuff, and it's badass and terrible all at the same time.
Yep. Yep.
That was cool.
And then we have the whole, the big battle between the two. Reapers have some landmines there. There's, I do like how Gabriel's,
By some landmines, you mean they have like 40.
yeah,
It's
they
an
have a
absurd
lot.
amount of explosives.
But then I like how Gabriel and Maggie have a plan, and Gabriel's like kind of going in and doing his thing. And then, the whole unveiling of the whatever it's
The
called.
Hwacha.
The Hwacha.
It's basically a Katyusha rocket launcher with arrows and yet more
Firework.
explosives. I don't know how they have so much explosives, these guys. This at this point in the apocalypse. There's also the scenes with Daryl like kind of befriending the Fallout Boy looking Reaper.
Yeah, and with the cigarette thing,
he establishes a rapport with cigarettes with this poor man, and then
kills him
straight up
over the wall. But there's a nice nonchalant thing where he he lets Maggie in. Basically, he's kind of going around. He's doing all this sort of stuff behind the scenes to help Maggie and her team. And then we've got, this is a pretty tough, it's going to be a tough go because this is a really hard group of people to kill. They've got a lot of superior weaponry and training, and
well, their weaponry isn't that superior. Actually, Maggie, I would say, she's somehow managed to hide a sniper rifle in this compound that Gabriel gets a hold of. But he is blind in one eye and not the best shot. He does kill one, but then his next like 3 shots all miss.
Yeah, I know. And the one-eyed priest, I don't know. Anyway, but the biggest scene here is the one between Daryl and Leah where they take Pope out. So they take Pope out, but they also take out the
engineer.
other guy. And I mean, I think, you can kind of see Leah's true colors here clearly. Like she does not care whether they have taken out quote unquote her family, which is kind of what she says. She just wants a power grab. She wants to be the one in charge now. Clearly.
I don't know that I agree with that. I think when she sees that Daryl has taken out the guy who built the Hwacha, that is actually when she kind of decides, no, I'm upset by this. This didn't have to happen. Like Pope had to die because he was ordering them to fire the Hwacha on her team. So I think it's both. I think it's a power grab, and because she thinks she can lead better than Pope was, because Pope was basically getting them all killed.
The thing is that the other guy had to die because he was a witness to Pope dying. So
he was a witness, and I don't know, was he running away or was he going to attack? It looked like he was maybe running away.
I don't know, but regardless, she couldn't have let him live if she was going to take over because he knew what had actually happened. But in any case, like
she dimes out Daryl, and there's probably a dozen Reapers left, unless the numbers are wrong. It's still enough of them to be extremely dangerous to anybody. So that's going to be a problem. And the Hwacha getting fired into the courtyard at Negan and Maggie at the very end of the episode is obviously a big question mark.
So we'll see what happens, I guess, when we come back. But Daryl and Leah probably done forever. Enemies forever.
Probably, unless something else happens where he's able to save her and she can convince whatever dregs of the Reapers that are left to come and help Alexandria. But then that will feel like, okay, we've also gone down this road before. This is the thing though, man. Like, okay, so there are these like elite soldiers or whatever. They needed shelter and food, so they took it. Why wouldn't they just be like, look, we can come to your community, and why wouldn't they go for the friendlier approach?
Well, and also if you think about it, it probably would have made more sense because then they've got all these resources that are right there, right? Like they have people building, like producing things, making crops. Like they don't seem to be doing anything but going, and they've even admitted it, going from community to community and just kind of destroying it, which doesn't make a ton of sense from a sustainability point of view. And you're putting your people at risk every time. Like it doesn't make a lot of sense overall.
So that not the best kind of baddie. Maybe it would have made sense earlier in the Zombocalypse.
Yeah.
But like the saviors at least were doing this exact thing, but with a sustainable model, which was kind of it wasn't super sustainable, obviously, because they overtaxed the communities that they were asking for tithes from.
Right.
But it was at least like, all right, we'll
It was
be
the
your
idea of
enforcers.
it, at least,
Yeah,
that this was supposed to be something that, you know, conquering whatever would eventually take the skills of others and keep things going. But
this episode, leaving this at this point, there's a couple of big cliffhangers here. You got Judith and Gracie in the flooding basement of the house with zombies at the door. Everybody else has gone upstairs. Um, and then you've got the Watcher getting fired into the courtyard almost directly at Maggie and Negan. We'll have to see how they do. And Elijah, I think, was hit by shrapnel out in the fields when
mhm,
the mines were going off. I don't know what they were doing walking through a minefield.
yeah,
That didn't feel like necessary. I mean, once all the explosives start going off, the zombies are going to be drawn
right.
toward that. They don't have to be there to like help out. I don't know. It didn't feel like that was necessary,
Nope.
but it does help them get in the door. I don't remember seeing Elijah in the final fight scene. I think he was kind of somewhere else. I don't know anymore if I'm supposed to be suspecting him as being a Reaper. It doesn't feel like it. It's just his costume was way too close to what they do. Although also none of them are wearing masks anymore. They have
No,
them on their belts, but none of them have them on. Wells didn't
no.
have his on when he went out into the woods. Nobody has them on. And I'm like, what was the point of the masks? That was just like
Right.
when we first meet them.
Yeah, I don't know. I would like them to develop Elijah more just because I think it could be an interesting character. But again, I have no idea what they're doing with that. Another couple of good points. I will say that Maggie's work, both in this one and the last one, in terms of like, especially with this one where she like gets in and gets the truck, is like pretty cool. Like I like how they have her in action, and it's the first time we've seen, well, okay, maybe she would be an okay leader in some sense, where she's trying to lead a successful siege and get the food and do all that. So I feel like that at least, were some pretty like the choreography of some of these scenes is pretty good. But I just curious to see what happens. They did leave a little bit of a cliffhangery thing. Hang on, let's see.
It's a pretty big cliffhanger thing.
Yep.
What are you looking for?
I was seeing when they had said it would come back. I don't think
There's nothing in Wikipedia
no.
suggesting when they'll come back, which I mean, Wikipedia is probably the last ones to know, but still,
February 20th, 2022.
that is a long time from now. But as we pointed out, World Beyond and Fear the Walking Dead are both on the air now. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, yeah, they both are. I've seen articles suggesting uh, feedback about both of them. We've also got Day of the Dead. We've got Kyle Diaz, friend of the show, was saying that Midnight Mass was a good show
Ooh.
that he had recently binged through. It's full of vampires, and so HA, I do posit to you that we need to figure out what we're going to do next.
Oh
I don't
man.
I don't think we want to stay in The Walking Dead
No, why
consistently.
don't we try out the Midnight Mass thing? If he's talking about it, we can move to vampires for Halloween season, no?
Yeah, I believe it's a mini series, like 8 episodes or something like that.
Oh. Does he want to
So
join us for maybe an
I mean,
episode?
I will extend the invitation. He knows it's an open door, so we'll see if we can get Kyle back and we can talk about some Midnight Mass. I understand that's a pretty good show. I mean, so give me, but before we go, HA, what are your impressions? Are you liking season 11 so far? 8 episodes in?
I like sort of aspects of it. I do feel like one of the things that you and I have talked about overall is that there's so many storylines and they try to cram a lot in. And I don't know that they're always successful in showing the things that they want to show. And it's made the pacing of it, I think, a little disjointed. Um, I do think that, as you said, we're seeing like repetition in terms of certain storylines or ideas. And it does feel like a repeat to some extent, but there are some really good bright spots. And, I would like to focus a little more on Negan, and Maggie and that kind of sort of conflict that they're having, because it is an interesting storyline and that sort of is exciting. I would like to see more about how the Commonwealth actually works, and just the nitty gritty. I don't know that we will, but it just feels unrealistic, and maybe that's deliberate. Maybe there are a lot of things that are being hidden, um, to sort of present this Disneyfied, community. and it looks like we might be right about certain points, but that, I kind of wish they had gone a little bit more into the logistics of how this community works, but maybe they're deliberately keeping it veiled to reveal for the next half, right?
Yeah, I
So
agree with you. I think Commonwealth needs a lot of work. And yet it's not a location where I want to spend a lot of time because I don't feel like the story is that good there. It's just like politics there, and as
yeah.
opposed to like and that contrasted with Alexandria, where it's like our doors are falling apart. We
Yep.
have no food. Like there is such different stories, and there's like a huge chasm between the two that I'm kind of more interested in the our community is on its last leg story than I am with the the governor's son is a meanie. Like that just
Yeah.
to me it doesn't really resonate. So I want to see the Commonwealth story really evolve, but
Right.
without having to languish in this suit and tie stuff for much longer. That's really
Um,
annoying.
and another bright spot, and I'll admit to you, I'm surprised to even admit this, just because in the past they have not done the best job at this. I do like the kids' storyline throughout these episode arcs, with Judith and
Yeah, Gracie and all
Grace
them.
and
Yeah,
all the kids, because I do think that that is an interesting thing, because these are kids that really don't know anything else. So kind of seeing their perspective and a realistic perspective. And I do think that they have written much better for the kids, like in terms of their characters and things like that. So I think that's been a kind of a cool bright spot. And maybe that is deliberate, and maybe we will see a spin-off possibly. I wouldn't be shocked if we did. But that this is a different perspective. Even how the kids were talking about basically letting the adults comfort themselves by saying they'll be back and whatever, and the kids are like, yeah, but we know that they might not be, like that kind of stuff. I think is really, those were good little windows into the reality of this world, and a different experience in this world. So I kind of liked that, and
yeah.
would like to see a little bit more of that.
I would love to see more of that. And frankly, those were some of my, as I've said before, those are some of my favorite scenes. And the exchange between Gracie and Judith about fear
Yep.
in these episodes was also really good.
Mm-hmm.
I just hope that they can stay away from other child actor plotline traps. But
Well, right. And
yeah.
I
Go
mean,
ahead.
not worrying about whether Carl's in the house, like that is no longer, or doesn't, I mean, a little bit with them running down to the basement, but they're also taking care of themselves, and they're also like, they're doing a little bit of the Carl thing, I think, with Gracie, but hopefully they'll get away from it.
She had the right idea. She wasn't like out there throwing rocks at walkers in the
True,
you
true.
know. But yeah. So I'm pretty much on board. I agree with you. The Commonwealth is the anomaly here. Obviously it's going to be majorly important for the latter half or part of the season. Something about that has to pay off for all of this effort. And I'm a little bit bummed out that the Reapers are still going to be a factor going forward. Like I was kind of hoping to sew that up, but
Me too.
they're a threat. So all right, so we will come back to the Prime show in February. It's so long away.
I know.
But next time we can talk about some vampires.
Sweet. All right. Well, until next time, let us know what you think, about the mid-season finale. You can leave us a message on our site, reanimatedpodcast.com, tweet at us, reanimatedpcast, or send us an email, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. And
Word.
until next time, ciao.
All right, thank you and cheerio.